Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are unpacking a completely misunderstood biological mechanism that pretty much all of us experience. I'm talking about that sudden, out-of-nowhere flash of anger. You know the one. We're going to dive into how anger actually isn't a flaw at all, but rather an absolutely crucial boundary emotion. We'll look at exactly why we react the way we do, and more importantly, how we can use those intense, hot-headed moments as powerful tools for self-discovery instead of just, beating ourselves up with guilt. If you've ever felt like your emotions just hijacked you out of nowhere, you're definitely going to want to stick around for this one. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the unseen stress leak.
So, picture this. You're running 5 minutes late. You pat your pocket, no keys. You check the kitchen table, no keys. Or, hey, maybe you're just trying to send one simple tiny email, and the loading wheel of death is just mocking you, spinning and spinning and spinning. Suddenly, boom, you are hit with this flash of absolute blinding frustration. You let out a yell, you slam the laptop shut, or maybe you snap at whoever just happens to be standing nearby. And almost instantly, it feels entirely out of proportion, right? Like, it's just a misplaced key. It's just lagging Wi-Fi. So why this explosive rage over something so incredibly mundane?
Well, when you have that sudden, seemingly irrational flash of anger, your immediate instinct is probably self-judgment. You think, wow, I have a terrible temper, or you might even label yourself a bad person. But the source material we're digging into today explicitly tells us something so important. This sudden irritation is absolutely not a moral failing. You aren't broken. Actually, scratch that whole bad temper idea entirely, because there is an actual, deeply logical, structural mechanism at work right behind that anger.
Think of your emotional capacity to handle daily life like a giant water reservoir. Every single day, you're carrying unseen stress. It's the subtle anxiety about an upcoming work project, the mental load of remembering to buy groceries, the slight exhaustion from a bad night's sleep, the whole shebang. These are like tiny, steady trickles of water flowing right into your reservoir. You carry this unseen stress for far too long, and you probably largely ignore it, because each individual drop doesn't seem like a huge deal on its own. But eventually, that water reaches the absolute brim. So that slow internet connection or that missing key, that is not the actual problem. The explosion of anger isn't about the key at all. It's literally the biological consequence of your internal reservoir hitting its absolute limit and breaching its banks.
Moving right along to Section 2, anger as a boundary.
Okay, so a boundary emotion is a vital internal signal indicating that an emotional reservoir is full and your limits are being crossed. Seriously, this is a massive revelation. We are so conditioned by society to think of anger as a failure of our own self-control. But what if it's actually a feature, not a bug? The text here completely destigmatizes anger. It transforms it from this toxic character trait into a crucial, totally necessary function of your psychology. It's basically your internal dashboard lighting up, waving a giant red flag, desperately trying to tell you that your limits have been crossed and your tank is completely full.
Anger is a boundary emotion. I really want to anchor this psychological reframe in your mind. Next time you feel that hot, heavy heat rising in your chest over something seemingly tiny, remember this exact quote. It's not a sign that you're failing at life, I promise. It is literally your brain and your body recognizing that a hard boundary has been hit. Your internal system is actually working perfectly to alert you. Acknowledging this specific emotion for what it is the absolute key to dropping the guilt.
Which brings us to Section 3, the nervous system alarm. So what exactly is the unseen stress that's filling up your tank? Well, the data points to a few concrete stressors. First up, unmet needs. Maybe you haven't eaten a real meal, maybe you haven't rested, or maybe you just haven't had a single moment of quiet to yourself all week. Second is overstimulation. The constant pinging of group chats, the bright fluorescent lights, the loud traffic, the sheer exhausting volume of decisions you have to make every single hour. When you combine those unmet needs with constant overstimulation, your nervous system interprets all of that as an actual physical threat. It doesn't know the difference between a slow internet connection and a tiger chasing you. It just slams the emergency button, throwing your nervous system directly into fight mode, which you experience as that sudden, intense flash of anger.
That wild physiological response you feel, the spike of adrenaline, the quickened breath, the sudden urge to just scream, is simply your biological system doing its job. It's alerting you to the fact that you've been ignoring your unmet needs and dealing with way too much overstimulation. It's an alarm bell, not a character flaw. Think of it exactly like a smoke detector going off in your kitchen. You wouldn't get mad at the smoke detector for making noise, right? No, you'd go find the fire. In the exact same way, we shouldn't judge ourselves for the anger. We need to go look for the unseen stress that caused our internal alarm to ring in the first place.
All right, final part of our explainer. Section 4, Swan versus Zen Master.
On one side, we have the swan, Have you ever watched a swan glide across a lake? Above the water, it looks incredibly graceful. Flawless, really. But if you look underneath the surface, its little webbed feet are just paddling furiously, fighting the current, working to absolute exhaustion just to maintain that illusion of smooth gliding. The swan represents performative calm, suppressing all those flashes of anger and frustration, paddling frantically just to keep up appearances. Now contrast that with the Zen master, representing authentic calm. This isn't about hiding the frantic paddling. A Zen master doesn't suppress the boundary emotion of anger. They listen to it, they regulate it, and they empty the tank. The calm you see on the outside genuinely matches the peace on the inside. No frantic paddling required.
So how do we actually get there? The source material gives us a super clear, structured pathway to apply this new boundary lens to our lives. Step 1. Stop the performative calm. When anger flares up, don't pretend you're completely fine while the unseen stress just piles up behind the dam. Give yourself permission to be a human being with an actual capacity limit. Step 2. Acknowledge the boundary. Recognize that flash of anger for what it really is, an alarm bell for overstimulation. Look for those unmet needs. And finally, step 3. Move toward authentic regulation. Address the stress rather than just shoving it down. Take the break. Step away from the glowing rectangle. Empty that reservoir before the anger ever reaches a boiling point.
So I want you to ask yourself this honestly as you go about the rest of your week. When you are moving through a stressful day, projecting that perfect image of having it all together to the world, are you truly calm or are you just a swan paddling frantically beneath the surface? Remember, your anger is not a failure, it's a boundary. True regulation comes from listening to that alarm, not hiding it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll see you next time.